listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
And welcome to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. Dave Ross alongside Geoff Schwartz here on this Monday. Geoff, we're getting so close. We can almost feel it now that the NBA is in the rear view, the NHL is in the rear view. It feels like football really starting to take center stage here. That's for sure. Our country, we can't get enough of it anyway. So almost turning the page full-fledged into training camps and beyond. But we do have some off-the-field stuff that I did want to talk to you about here to begin the show today. And our off-season update is presented by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly. And I guess we could say, please drive responsibly if you're Shedeur Sanders. He gets cited for doing 101 miles per hour. And look, I don't want to be up here and say, oh, you know, when I wore a younger man's clothes, did I do some things sometimes driving fast? We shouldn't do it. We get it. But how does that show itself if you're an organization, if you're Cleveland, that the young kid, my rookie, who we have big plans for, hopefully, has had this infraction not once but twice now? How do we make sure he's in the safe lane and not the fast lane?
So first and foremost, he was not drinking and driving, right? So I want to make that point. Like, and we've all experienced. I've had a reckless driving. Well, it wasn't reckless driving; it was close. I got like a 98 and a 65. Like I've been there before.
We've all driven fast.
Yeah,
right.
We've all right. It happened, but the thing is, it hasn't happened again, and it won't. Right? Like I think that's the concern, right, Dave? Is that certain positions in the NFL are held to higher standards when it comes to judgment, character, and just overall composure of the person, right? If you're a defensive lineman, you're looked at differently than a quarterback, right? If you're an offensive lineman, you're looked at differently than maybe a different position, right? And if you're the quarterback, your judgment is important, right? How you act off the field can often translate to on the field. And you get one ticket, fine. No one's going to care. Yeah. It's the headline is grand, right? 101 and a 55, whatever he got. But we've all been there. Like no one's demonizing him for that one incident alone. We've all been there. But then they get the second one a month after the first one. That's where the questions become, right? Like you want to be the leader of this franchise and we can't trust you just to not speed a second time within a month.
Right.
And so like those are fair questions. Again, is it going to really matter in the end for his career? Probably not. But I will tell you, if there are other things that happen or his judgment just on the field isn't great, we're going to look back and say, remember that time we got those 2 speeding tickets? So it could be nothing. It comes in. The one thing I found interesting too is that he failed to show for his first speeding ticket. I'm curious if he told the Browns, because team security is typically close with police departments in the area, right? And you're not going to appear in court if you're an NFL player with a speeding ticket. Now, of course, when you get to a certain level, it becomes reckless driving. I get that, and you might have to appear, but typically that's getting worked out. Like I got a ticket one time. I don't know if you want to get the story. I got a 44 and a 40. This officer thought I was drinking and driving, and I wasn't, and he pulled me over anyways, and he gave me a ticket, even though I wasn't speeding, because he was embarrassed. Yeah, I got a 44 and a 40. I was in Detroit, and I was leaving a team function, and I don't drink, Dave, so I'm sober. It's 10 o'clock at night, leaving a team function. It's a 4-lane road, 2 each way. And I'm driving down one. I'm actually on the phone with my wife, and this cop, kind of other direction, starts slowing down as he goes by me. I told my wife, like, I'm gonna get pulled over. He turned around and pulled me over and accused me of drinking and driving. He said my eyes were bloodshot and my breath smelled like alcohol. Again, I don't drink, so those are lies. Nonetheless, he gave me a 44 and a 40. That's what my ticket was, a 44 and a 40. I just gave it to team security, and they just got rid of it. That's what happens, right? That's a benefit, a perk of being in the NFL, is you get those benefits sometimes. And so I'm surprised that didn't happen for the first one. Like I'm not at arms about what happened with Shedeur. My point is about the judgment, right? Like again, I got a ticket for going fast in 2014. That's when I got that ticket. That's when I got it. I didn't do it again. Like, because then you get into more legal trouble if it happens again in North Carolina within 3 years. This whole thing. So I just didn't do it again, Dave. And so I think that's a question, right? Like, why did it happen again? And is this at all an issue with judgment moving forward with Sanders?
It's a great point to bring up. And again, I think what happens a lot of times, I want you, like yourself, that was a player that went through what Shedeur has gone through. We're not coming down on the young man. And we're not saying we haven't done these things. I know I've got my share of speeding tickets. We're saying use the experience that we're giving to you, saying we've been there, man. It's not worth it. And again, out here in the desert with Henry Ruggs in the situation a couple years ago out here, where again, speeding at a clearly reckless rate ruined lives. So like, look, we hope this is nothing. We hope it all passes for sure, but use the advice that Geoff's giving, that I'm sure the Browns are giving as well, saying, it's not worth it, man. Just slow down. I get it.
Yeah.
You're young. You're in the fast lane. Slow it down. There's no need for anything more serious to happen than the 101 that you got a second time around. And I do think that's the bigger point for a quarterback to lead your organization. The Jags, his former teammate there in Colorado, Travis Hunter, they're going to be looking at this young man as well with great responsibility. He has signed his rookie deal. It's a 4-year contract, almost $47 million. That deal has got a signing bonus. It's a pretty $30 million of it over that is guaranteed. So, Geoff, we talk about this playing two ways, been practicing both ways here. But now that you have this sign set and everything's done there with the contract, what are the realistic expectations for a Travis Hunter in year number one?
Well, look, I was wrong about his usage in Colorado, and maybe I'll be wrong again here. I just don't see how he's going to play both sides at a high level. And that's why, I there's just, again, I keep being wrong about it. I was wrong about him in Colorado, about how much he could play, and maybe I'm wrong again here, but to do both at that level, like think about just the playbook. Like, in college football, you have a small playbook, right? Let's say it's 30, 50 pages. In the NFL, it's 200 pages. You got to learn both of those, offense and defense. That's what I've always said. The best path, the easiest path to play both sides is to be a full-time cornerback and a part-time wide receiver, right? Being a full-time wideout and a full-time corner, the amount of reps and damage your body's going to take is going to be a lot. It's a lot. And so that's why I think that's probably the way it ends up happening. And right now, they don't have to decide, right? They can let it ride and just let him do what he needs to do. I think when it comes down to it, that's the best way to use him. If you want to make a full-time wideout, he will be very good at that position. Like that's perfectly fine to do that, Dave. But to get the most out of him, you want to do the two-way thing. It's full-time corner, part-time wideout, or in my opinion, full-time wideout. There's no full-time wide receiver and then part-time corner. That's impossible to do, in my opinion. And also, one thing about this too that's interesting from a schematic perspective, and I know Hunter is very good, so this might not matter as much in the end, but if you have him play defense part-time, full-time, you would think it would be a lot of man coverage, right? Just like go in there and guard the wide receiver. Well, if you know that offensively, they're in man coverage, it's an advantage. It's an advantage to know that they're in man coverage. And so that's what I'm curious about. If Jacksonville does play him part-time on defense, are they going to use complex coverages with him that he might not have practiced during the week or might not have had a lot of reps at all? Or are they going to stick him out there and play man coverage only?
It is going to be fascinating. So I'm with you. It just feels like, can you really do this at the elite level? We talk about injuries a lot too. All those extra reps on your body playing too, what can be very physical positions, obviously wide receiver and corner as well. It'd be interesting to see how if his body can tolerate that for an entire rookie season. It's a lot to ask for a guy you just made a real big investment in with a second overall pick. I want to ask you about this, certainly with your expertise and what the Giants are doing with a former number one first round pick, in Evan Neal, their former left tackle, or at least was going to play tackle. They're going to move him to guard. And the Giants say that so far it's going well, that, quote, he's picking up things well inside. That's from Brian Dable. From your perspective, Geoff, moving Neal inside from tackle to guard, is that an easy transition? And what exactly does he need to pick up?
So, this is something that I think people just think, just move him inside. It's going to be fine. I was one of those guys. I played tackle my first, what ended up being like 2.5 years in the NFL and moved into guard middle of my third season. And, what I see from the transition that makes it easier and how it actually works, like if you're an offensive lineman that has good hands, but your feet might not be there to play tackle, going inside I move less. My hands are still good. Like inside the battle happens immediately. It happens now. You have to have good hands. If you struggle at tackle because your hands are bad, but your feet are fine, you get inside and you just get bullied. Your hands are not ready for action, not ready for combat. And I think for Evan Neal, he falls into maybe the category of the former, right? Where his feet and his footwork sometimes doesn't mirror with his hands. I think his hands are okay. So going inside might allow him to use his hands in a little better way and in less movement. And that's, I could see that being something. And look, the Giants have to play him somewhere, right? They used a first round pick on him. They have to find the best place to play him. So it makes sense. I hope it works for him. But it's not as easy as just like, hey, go in there and play guard.
By the way, to that point, if he wasn't a former first-round pick, would he be getting the opportunity to transition to guard? Or is this more of a, we really want to figure out if we can salvage something with this former first-rounder?
Oh, all of this is first-round draft bias. The 7th round pick, it frustrates the heck out of me because this is the way the league is. And look, I'm not saying it's wrong, but there's a draft slot bias, right? Where a guy drafted later doesn't get the chances a guy in the first round does. Then even, prolonging their career, there are plenty of guys that I saw throughout my career that got 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th chances because the first round picks, even they're not good. Everyone convinces themselves, I can fix them. I'm the team to fix them. My coach can do it. And so, yeah, if Evan Neal was a late round pick, he'd been cut already. But look, that's the benefit of that draft pick and all the work you put in college to get to that point. I'm not knocking him for your first round pick, but certainly that does help.
I love it. I love the perspective that only former players can bring in that regard. And I think that's exactly why Evan Neal, right? You earn that first round pick. That's great. And now you get maybe extra chances that other guys in the league would not get. All right, when we come back, I want to start to break down as we continue the breakdowns of every single division here in the NFL, the NFC South, and what the hierarchy might look like this year, and maybe if we could get a worst to first scenario. We'll discuss that when you come back with us right here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Well, we continue the GM Shuffle presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Dave Ross, Geoff Schwartz here with you on this Monday as we continue our breakdown, Geoff, of every single division. And this episode of the GM Shuffle is presented by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly. When you look at the NFC South, I always say, at least in the betting markets, Geoff, it's a two-pronged approach for me in my trust level. Do I trust the quarterback and do I trust the coach? And if those are yeses, then I'm more apt to fire on those teams. If there's a question about one and or the other, I kind of stay away. I trust Todd Bowles, and I can't believe I'm saying this. I trust Baker Mayfield. I know Liam Cohen is gone as the OC. Dave Canales was the OC 2 years ago. He's long gone. Can we still trust Baker and Bowles if you're backing the Bucs? That's a lot of B's.
I think you can, because whatever we saw Baker early in his career, the maturity level has ramped up, right? And that's natural, right? The older you get as a player, you would tend to mature a little bit. I think the consistency he's shown now is very admirable. He's, again, for a long time, I was one of the people that was like, why are you doing commercials before your career has basically arrived? And in the last couple of years, man, 4,000 yards 2 years ago, 4,500 last season, 41 touchdowns last year. Now they continue to have new offensive coordinators. It does a little bit concern me at times when it comes to the how seamlessly the offense can transition. But dude, it's a talented offense. Like I don't think we look at them like that, right? Bucky Irving had a great rookie season, right? At running back, and they have Rachaad White, right, who's getting older, but still a useful back. Baker Mayfield, Kate Otten's good. Offensive line, I mean, good, right? Like not probably great, but good. Not bad, of course. We know that. Then you have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin back from injury, and Emeka Egbuka, who they drafted, plus Jalen McMillan from last season. Like, it's a legitimately good team. Good offense around them. And so they are as steady as they come, right? They're good on defense. We know with Bowles as the head coach, D coordinator kind of set up there as well. So it's a solid football team. Are they going to win a Super Bowl? No. Do they have the capability to win a lot of games? Yes. And that's why they're a good team to back when it comes to some of the futures. I think you feel very comfortable if they have a chance to just be, what you're getting with them right now. I'm not saying that you're betting they're over. I don't know, or been to win the division. No, but we'll talk about the other teams in this division. I don't really know what Atlanta is. I don't know. I think I know what Carolina is, but maybe not. I think we know what Tampa Bay is, right?
Well, it's a great point about Baker that, you're doing the Allstate commercials or whatever it was back in your Cleveland days. And all of a sudden you go from that and being the number one pick with John Dorsey back in the day in Cleveland to basically being almost out of the league, for being honest. After Carolina, he goes for a hot cup of coffee in LA and kind of gets his groove back a little bit with Sean McVay. And that got him to Tampa Bay. But when he got to Tampa after Brady, nobody envisions a grandeur. Now, Geoff, you walk into that offensive huddle and you've got Baker Mayfield as your quarterback. And as you mentioned, you still got Mike Evans, still got Godwin. You got these plethora of younger receivers now to go with them. Do you say, like Baker, I don't need to worry about if the OC is going to be as good as Liam Cohen was or as good as Dave Canales was, because Baker is the guy that is the thread of that needle from the past OCs. In that huddle, do you go, we're confident with the guy we got under center?
Well, the players certainly are, and I'm sure the coaches are as well. But there is a brain dump, right? Like if you keep losing offensive coordinator, how many of the offensive coordinators will continue to be good and good and good every single year? Like, it does matter. As good as Baker is, or as Mike Evans is, or any of the Tristan Wirfs is an all-pro offensive lineman. You coaching does matter, and if you have a situation where you've had so many OCs over the years that the next one, I'm trying to find who the OC is now. The next one up, isn't as good. It does matter, right? I mean, we see all the time. So it could be a problem. I don't think it's going to be, because they have very good pieces around them. Like, it would be hard to mess it up. So Kevin Carberry is the run game coordinator, offensive line coach. George Edwards, the pass game coordinator, and then Josh Grizzard is the OC. So lots of those titles. I love the titles, by the way. So the titles, for those who don't know, why those titles? It's just for money, right? So when you move from offensive line to run game coordinator, you get paid more money, and you can't be poached, right? If you can only be poached from a staff if you're fired, or two, if it's not a lateral move. So you can't go O-line coach to O-line coach. You go O-line coach to run game coordinator, right? So that's how they have all these things. So George Edwards, pass game coordinator. They have another run game coordinator. They have a defensive line run game coordinator. That's so funny. Larry Foote's the outside linebacker coach and run game coordinator.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great point, because we talked a little bit about it in the last couple of editions of the GM Shuffle, like Brian Schottenheimer, who was on the staff under Mike McCarthy. Now McCarthy's gone. He's got to be elevated to the head coach. And now Dak Prescott, maybe that friendship relationship becomes, you now I'm the head coach. And so for Grizzard here, you go, well, now I'm the offense coordinator, promoted from within. So clearly familiar with Baker and vice versa. But now I'm kind of your overseer as the OC. I wonder if that dynamic changes. But when we shift to Atlanta in Michael Penix Jr. now in year number 2, as we do the hierarchy of the perceived hierarchy of the South, with the Bucs as the reigning defending champs again. What do we make of Penix now, year 2? So Kirk Cousins is still there, by the way. He's still second string right now, if you will, which is an odd juxtaposition there. But now that confidence level, are we confident that Penix is the right guy and should be the starting quarterback over Kirk Cousins?
Yes, I feel very comfortable with him being the starting quarterback. I watched him eat up my Ducks for 2 years there out west in the Pac-12. And he can sling the rock, man. He can throw the ball. Now, of course, there's more seasoning to being a National Football League quarterback, but when you looked last year, just the arm talent difference between him and Cousins, who's getting older off that injury, it wasn't even close. I mean, Penix, he can throw the ball at a high level. Now, of course, as a rookie, you have to refine your game in year 2, right? 58% complete percentage is not good enough in the NFL. Only 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. But again, he's a rookie thrown into a situation at the end of the season. Only started, I believe, 3 games down the stretch. So there's a lot of throws he made that are build on. And also, I think I'm right on this. He also played well down the stretch in a lot of these games.
That last game against the Commanders, Jeff, on Sunday
Yeah.
Night Football for all the marbles, that second half, that fourth quarter, it looked like he was growing up right before our eyes.
Yeah. So like those are important. So, I can throw the stats out, you 58%, all those things I just mentioned. And then just acknowledge that, like, in the moments where it mattered, which is what I saw him do in college, by the way.
Yes.
He elevated himself in those moments. And there is something to having that it factor, right? The it factor of because a lot of players can do it when it quote unquote doesn't matter, right? But there's a special player that does it when it does matter. And so far, what I've seen from him in college and the NFL, he has that in him. Now it's about obviously honing that in. Look, and the roster around him is not about Will Bijan. The offensive line has some pieces there that are really good. They're still working at other places. Kyle Pitts, I don't know what they're doing with him. They seem to not like him anymore. Who knows? But, we know he can catch the ball, right? The wide receivers are fine. I think London is going to be good the older he gets. And Mooney had a good year. Like it's a good, not great wide receiving core, but a quarterback can make that group better. Question is defensively, right? They couldn't rush a passer last season. How do they rush the passer this season? They added Floyd. And then they also just drafted a bunch of guys, Pierce back in the first round. They got Walker as well. Most considered Walker, I'll tell you this, most considered him, even though he wasn't much of a pure edge rusher in college, like the best football player of the edge rushers that were available early in the draft. So that's an important aspect there. Pierce feels like a little bit of a reach. We're not doing a draft recap, but they added those players they needed to rush the passer because that was a big problem for them last season.
We talk about sometimes all the time, the player personnel moves and the changes there. Well, what about now? Because you look at Raheem now, year number 2 as the head coach down in the ATL. He brings in Geoff Ulbrich to be his new defensive coordinator. We saw with the Jets and what happened with Saleh, and then he had to take over. Did not look like that went very well in that stint. And remember, Ulbrich was there back in their glory days as a linebacker coach under Dan Quinn when they went to a Super Bowl down there in the ATL. What do you make of Raheem tapping? And remember, Raheem was a defensive coordinator. It's how he got the job. Yeah. So he's got to fix this defense when he came over from the Rams as their DC to be the head coach here in Atlanta. Is this what the Falcons need? Ulbrich, Raheem as the 1-2 brain trust to get this defense figured out.
So the way I look at a head coach's responsibilities when it comes to their side of the ball, right? Like if you're an OC by nature and you become the head coach, you still have a hand in the offense, right? For the most part, you might not call plays, but it's your offense, right? And if you're a defensive coach, you might not call plays, but it's your defense. So in the end, it's Raheem Morris's defense, but having a guy like Geoff there who you trust can help you do other things as a coach, right? So in practice, you wouldn't have to just stay with the defense. Like I've had head coaches like Andy Reid, for example. He's always hired older, maybe not former head coaches, but guys that have coached a while to do the defense. It was Bob Sutton, it was Spags. Yeah. Because during the practice, Andy Reid is with the offense only. He's the OC. He's calling the plays. And so when you hire someone like Ulbrich, like maybe this is Raheem Morris saying, okay, I want to spend more time at practice with other position groups. I don't want to say my own time, but in the end, it is Morris's defense. And that's sort of one criteria I look at when it comes to firing a head coach. If your side of the ball is not good, that's a problem. Like if your side of the ball, if you're Morris and your defense stinks, you're a defensive guy. It can't be bad. So adding more coaches is never a bad thing. But that's the way I look at sort of the coach dynamic with your head coach, your offensive defensive guy.
And again, Terry Fontenot, the GM, I know there was a lot of criticism, obviously, of where they drafted Michael Penix after giving the big deal in free agency to Kirk Cousins. So can you justify it now saying this was our plan all along? Penix, I don't know. Feels like a waste. Still feels like wasted money, though, in the free agent market, right?
Yeah, in hindsight, I guess it looks fine. I don't like the Falcons process. I didn't like it last year. I don't like it with James Pierce. The trading back up for him, trading a first for him. You can end up being correct when your process cannot be good, or you can be the Oklahoma City Thunder and your process works out perfectly. So it just depends on how the end result unfolds.
Yeah, and it's going to be a big year, obviously, for the front office in Fontenot. Raheem Morris, the coaching changes. Michael Penix Jr. as the starting quarterback. What do they do with Kirk Cousins? That we still don't know. All right, when we come back, let's break down what we think is the lower tier of the NFC South, but could there be surprises on the way? That's next here on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We continue the GM Shuffle here on a Monday. Dave Ross, Geoff Schwartz here at you, talking all things NFC South. And again, we don't know if the hierarchy, hopefully if you heard earlier in the program, we believe it looks like Tampa Bay is the reigning defenders. They've won the division every year since even Tom Brady retired. Feels like 10 years ago now. And the Falcons potentially nipping at their heels. 3 and 4 are interesting, at least in the win totals, the way they are slated. That the Carolina Panthers, who did win 5 games a year ago, played better football towards the end of the year there. Dave Canales in year number 1, now in year number 2 as a head coach, and year number 3 for the quarterback in Bryce Young. Geoff, have you seen enough from that offensive genius, got the job coming over from Tampa, where he's credited with resurrecting Baker Mayfield's career, that Dave Canales is doing the same with Bryce Young? Do we see similarities there?
I think they are. And look, when he was benched last season, I said on the record, I thought this was the end of Bryce Young in Carolina, right? Because the staff, Canales, Dan Morgan, the general manager, they had no connection to Bryce Young. They didn't draft him, right? There was no emotional connection there. Then Dog doesn't play well, and Bryce Young comes back in, and hey, man, it looked a lot better. It looked like a legitimately improving quarterback. And that is, I think, what you have to look at and say, hey, man, like we lost some close games. They lost to KC by 3, lost to Tampa in overtime. They should have beat Philly as well. And there was some legitimately good play from Bryce Young. And I think you have to be encouraged with where they're at. And look, it takes 8, 10, 12 weeks to figure out an offense when you have new pieces, new quarterback, new OC. And it did take some time. It looks like they figured it out. Now, there were games that are better than others. But I think you have to look at the way he finished, his decision-making. He cut down interceptions. He completed more passes. He had more yards, and that's with a Carolina receiving core that wasn't great last season, right? It's not like he had a great group around him. And I think you have to be really excited with the improvement, and that should get you excited for this season. And I think it's important to note just overall, holistically, with this team, like they lost a lot of close games, the last 6 weeks. Sometimes you have to lose close games before you win close games, Dave. And it was a pretty important last year. Again, you don't want to lose games. I get it, but those are growing experience and growing pains. I mean, they won what 1, 2, 3, 4 of their last 9 games, which previously they had won in 1 of their previous 8. So there was growth there. They played Super Bowl teams and kept those games close. And so I like their addition this offseason. I'm high on Carolina. I think they have a chance this year to do the worst to first.
Woo. And again, we make those comparisons with Baker in Canales and Tampa. And then again, almost like because of the stature, right? That Baker is not the biggest quarterback out there. We know that that's the knock on Bryce is that sometimes get to see over the line of scrimmage. I mean, they used to say this about Drew Brees. We're not knocking a guy. He's just not the tallest guy back there.
Yeah.
Baker was very similar, where a lot of things early in his career were off schedule. And I think that was frustrating maybe for offensive linemen and certainly for wide receivers. And then as Baker has evolved with the help of guys like Canales back in the day, he's more of an on-schedule quarterback these days. Are you seeing those comparisons with Bryce, that it does not have to be out of the pocket, make it up as we go along, that we can play from within the framework of the offense, a la Baker Mayfield did with Canales, and that's starting to transpire now in Carolina?
So two things here. One is you have to build an offensive line to help a smaller quarterback. And the Panthers did that. So what do you do in New Orleans? Did this as well with Jari Evans and Carl Nix and some of the other, Max Unger they had at center for a while. And you need to have big guards, like big old guys. And you think, oh, well, how do quarterbacks see with a big guard? The reason why they see is those big guys keep the front of the pocket very firm, right? They don't back up. They're just big in the middle. And when you're big in the middle, let's just say this, the middle guys, the tackles then have the width of the pocket essentially, right? Quarterback can step up and see things, right? When guys get pushed into him, he can't see. So the Panthers went ahead and got themselves Damian Lewis and Robert Hunt and Austin Corb. Like they got Chandler Sevilla. Like they got big offensive linemen to help the quarterback with his throwing angle, with his throwing. It has to be done. Has to be done. And then, of course, you can design an offense around all of that, right? By moving the quarterback out of the pocket a little bit, by changing the launch point, by doing different things to just get him not have to just stand in the pocket the entire game. And so Canales, again, it takes time to figure that out. It felt like they figured that out. And then, of course, go get yourself some big old wide receiver and say, Bryce Young, throw it up to those guys. You know, you might not be able to see them as well, but here's a 6'4" wide receiver. You can see him on the field. So I liked what the Panthers did offensively, but more importantly, defensively, they were bad last year. We know that. Now, part of that was Brown being hurt, but they went out this year and got themselves a new defense, right? They went and got themselves a defense in the draft, and I heard Schwartz doing great things in minicamp so far. The kid out of, I believe it was A&M, correct? Second round pick for them. They went and got Warren from Kansas City. Brown is back healthy. They got Mooring from Vegas. Like it's a much better roster defensively with health and with guys that they brought in. I think it's a team on the rise that's much more talented than last season.
And I also like the Rico Dowdle signing at running back. I think that's going to help Bryce Young as well, right? So I'm with you.
I'm not an over guy for running back props, but he's one guy that I think, and the problem is he's not going to be the primary guy or he might be depending on Brooks' injury status, but there's a chance that that Dowdle, I guess Brooks is not even there. It's Chubbard. Like there's a chance that Hubbard. I said Chubbard. I combined both names there. Hubbard. There's a chance that like Dowdle becomes the guy. Eventually, Brooks is on the team. Why is he on the roster here? I know he's on the team. They drafted him last season. Well, Brooks is there too.
Right.
He's on PUP, isn't he?
Yep. And they've got some depth now. Yeah. That's the encouraging thing about when you bring in Rico Dowdle. And look, Carolina saw him torch them as a member of the Cowboys last year down there in Charlotte. I think it's going to be a very dependable depth at running back. Geoff, what do you see there? Still on the PUP list?
Well, no. I was looking at the depth chart. Like they didn't have him on the depth chart. I'm like, why isn't he? Must be because he's on one of the injury lists. That's why I'm so surprised. I'm like, Brooks is not there anymore. I'm like, wait, the second round, how's he not on the depth chart anymore?
Yeah, they have some added depth here, so that offense should look better. And as you mentioned, that defense a lot better on paper. So maybe a dangerous team now in the South all of a sudden if they keep progressing at the level that they were a year ago. Now, Canales in year 2 there, you got a year 1 guy in Kellen Moore with the Saints. So he's going to come over, help lead the Eagles to a Super Bowl last year as the offense coordinator there. I know him well. Cowboy fans know him well as offensive coordinator duties down there with Mike McCarthy. Didn't really go well the 1 year in L.A. with the Chargers. Now you get Tyler Shuck. You draft him in the 2nd round, 40th overall. He's in a quarterback competition with guys they drafted last year. So it's a really young quarterback room. It's a really young head coach and a first-year head coach. Geoff, I guess it's just young. We're going youth movement here in New Orleans from coaching and quarterback. What do you make of what the Saints outlook could be? And right now I'm seeing some markets, Geoff, they're the second betting choice to have the fewest wins in the entire league.
Yeah, they're going to be bad. It just is. It is what it is. So Tyler Shuck might be good, even though he's older than both of us. There's just a very poor history of second-round quarterbacks in the NFL. So before him, the last one was Will Levis, drafted in 2023. Then there was Kyle Trask in 21. Jalen Hurts was the success story, right, in 2020. 2019, Drew Lock, right, second round pick. Yep. 27 was Deshaun Kaiser in the second round. Then you have Christian Hackenberg back in 2016. I'll go down the list here. Just like I think you get more gist, right? Derek Carr, good, and Garoppolo. So those are 2 good ones. Geno Smith, not bad. But Brock Osweiler and it's just like the last 7-8 years of these second round quarterbacks, not good. And so, could Shuck be better than we think? Absolutely. And him being good certainly would help their success this year. Having healthy wide receivers, which they didn't have last season, super important, right? Shaheed was hurt for a lot of the year. Cooks was hurt, and Olave. Like, they have a good group of wide receivers. Offensive line, Banks they drafted. Ruiz is good. McCoy is good, but they got some guys coming up on free agency. Fuaga, I think he had a decent rookie season. I mean, it's not a bad offense, right? Defensively, I do question the overall playmakers on defense. And Cam Jordan gonna be a Hall of Famer, fantastic, getting up there in age, obviously. Demario Davis getting up there in age, like some of the a little older on defense for some positions. But I mean, Tyler Shuck's got to be like much better than we think early in his career for this team to have as many wins as they want. I just think they're one of those teams that are just not going to win a lot this year. It's one of those sort of, they're in the middle of a rebuild on the fly type situation, right? Carr obviously getting hurt. I think gets them closer to that idea. They have a bloated salary moving forward with their salary cap, and a schedule that's looks like won't be a favorite in a lot of games.
It is kind of interesting, their history, right? Drew Brees drafted in the second round by the Chargers. They trade for Drew. They win a Super Bowl, right, with Sean Payton back in the day. Then last year, what did they do? Or a couple years ago, they go out and get Derek Carr, former second-round pick other than Oakland Raiders, right? And it wasn't working out. That's debatable. And now he's gone. He's retired with the shoulder injury. And now in the second round, you go back to the well here with Tyler Shuck. So it seemed to be a trend in the history of the Saints. I will say this. I wonder, Geoff, players don't tank. You and I have talked about that as well. Sometimes organizations, even front offices, they look at Arch Manning coming out, speaking of that Manning lineage there in New Orleans. I wonder, we don't know if he's even going to come out from Texas. But do you think that if they are the worst team in the league, Geoff, it's not a bad consolation prize to have the first overall pick?
Yeah, I think it's very hard to sit in the building right now and look to next year and say, right, let's stink because so-and-so might be available. How often do we see as we preview this upcoming college football season, which is starting, NBA is over now, so it's officially preview season. The magazines are going to float the Schwartz household, buddy.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
We continue the GM Shuffle. Dave Ross, Geoff Schwartz here with you on a Monday as we break down the NFC South. And we were talking about the Saints, and certainly Tyler Shuck being drafted in the second round, 40th overall, does not necessarily mean, Geoff, he's going to be the QB day one. And I remember talking just with Lorenzo Alexander, played 15 years in the NFL. Yeah. Zoe and I were working in Washington, D.C. Obviously, he was with the Redskins. I was with the TV station. And as we were leaving off the set, just off the air, and he was leaving to go to Arizona. And I remember saying to Zoe, joking, I was like, oh, man, you guys need a quarterback out there. And he's like, what are you talking about, D? And I'm like, you guys don't have a quarterback. He goes, we've got Carson Palmer. And I'm thinking to myself, you guys are excited about Carson Palmer? Lo and behold, they go to the NFC title game with a veteran that a lot of people had thrown on the scrap heap saying, this guy's done. And when I look at the young quarterbacks now with the Saints, and obviously you've got second-year guys here, Jake Haener, he's 50-1 to take the first snap. Spencer Rattler, a lot of starting time last year, he's plus $2 to take the first snap under center. Or the rookie quarterback here in Tyler Shuck at minus $3. Geoff, as a lineman, what are you looking for? Because I don't see it that way. Yeah. Sometimes we don't see it the same way players do. Are you looking for a veteran? And can we even call Rattler and Haener veterans at this juncture in year number 2?
They're not veterans, buddy. I think what you look for, honestly, is confidence, right? And I remember playing with Eli Manning, Alex Smith. I've been fortunate to play with some good quarterbacks that played a lot of football in the NFL. And when they walk in the huddle, and the way they say the plays and they command the huddle, there's a confidence in that. Right now, I play with other quarterbacks, unfortunately, that were young and get in the huddle and they're like, right, left. You're like, oh boy, here we go. It's not gonna. You can't read the play right. And there were guys that just like no confidence in the way they even read the play, right? And so that's what we want, right? We want a guy who's trustworthy. If you are supposed to be in this spot to throw the ball, be in that spot. If we have a check to be made, make the right check. And again, I've had quarterbacks where we've had to turn around and tell the quarterback to make the right check because he didn't do it properly.
Oh,
Like we don't want that, right? Like we don't want to be like, hey, like safety down, check the play, right? So that's what we want from a quarterback. And whether that's a young guy or old guy, most often it's an older guy, right? Who's been around. Now, if there's a young player who's so talented, we can see that talent and know he needs reps. And maybe it's like, well, you might have some uneasiness with that transition, but we know eventually he's going to be good. We're fine with that. But you look at New Orleans and with Shuck and Hainer and Rattler, Tyler Shuck has the most physical, the most gifts, I think. I mean, Rattler does have those. Hainer does not. Hainer's like a career backup type player. So maybe they look at it and think to themselves, well, Rattler's, he's played a little bit. We can feel that confidence in the huddle. But Shuck's 26. Played a lot of ball. He was Justin Herbert's backup at Oregon. Like that's how long he'd been. So to me, when you get to these young guys, it is about maybe not so much the confidence in the huddle because they're all going to be raw there, but just, can you make plays? So I'm not laying minus 330 on Tyler Shuck to be the first quarterback to take a snap for New Orleans. That would be a waste of anyone's money, but it does seem like they want him to win the job, which is important as well, right? What the staff wants, how they give people reps is important to note in training camp.
So you look at some other markets out there, speaking of the Saints here with these young quarterbacks and maybe the youngest being the rookie here in Tyler Shuck. They're going to open up at home. They're 5.5-point underdogs against Arizona. Then they're going to welcome in the Niners. So they're not leaving New Orleans for the first 2 weeks. Then they're going on the road to the Pacific Northwest, Sam Darnold and the Seahawks. Then they're going to Orchard Park to take on the Buffalo Bills. They're going to be massive double-digit underdogs there. And then home against the Giants. Geoff, you can play these markets where they have 1 win plus $1.90, 2 wins in that stretch plus $1.95, 0 wins plus $4.50. Is there if it goes south, they're going to have time because it's a rookie head coach and young players here. Could you see them being 0-5 or at least 0-4 going into that Giants game?
So if you have money that is expendable, not expendable, you don't want to lose your money, but you have money that is allowed to just sit in an account. There are ways to make money doing this, right? So you pick 0 wins at plus 450 if you think they're gonna have trouble start the season. And then you can play them on the money line. They're 0-4 hosting the Giants. Just play them on the money line. Like
sure.
you make some money. I think either way if you do that, right? Obviously, if they win one of the first 4 games, you're out. I wouldn't hedge all these games, but they're not winning in Seattle or Buffalo, in my opinion. With Tyler Shuck, those are 2 hard places to play. Maybe Arizona starts slow. Certainly possible in game 1. You're not beating San Francisco, so. There's a chance you take the 0 wins and you have that 5th game, they're 0-4, and you probably 2 0-4 teams, honestly, playing each other. That's going to be pretty brutal to watch. I will good luck on that one. If you want to watch that game. You know what's funny? That game's going to be 2 0-4 teams. And I promise you, get to my 5 wagers for the Super Contest. That'll be like, I'm going to take Saints +1 in that game. I just know it. I can already feel myself just like on the ugliest side of all time in that game. But yeah, I think Shuck probably starts, but I think it's probably rough early on with these teams they're playing.
We talked about it early in the program here that we do like the Panthers potentially as a team, not only to surprise and get over their win total, but maybe win the division. Now that would be predicated on a good start. Now you're opening up in Jacksonville again. Interesting there with a new head coach. Then you're going to Arizona, and then you're going to host the ATL in a divisional game. That's a big one. And then go to New England before you host Miami. It feels like the Miami game, week 5, you'd feel pretty good about Carolina at home potentially there. But what about those other 4 spots? Again, to have 2 wins in those first 5, it's almost 2-1 at plus money. Only 1 win plus 275. Dare I say 5-0? 30-1, Geoff. What do you make of the Panthers start?
I mean, so they're a 3.5-point dog, I should say, at home against Jacksonville. So it's just a standard. I guess right now, home field might not be 3 anymore, but that used to be the standard number for just a sort of even matchup, right, with a home field advantage. They're 4.5-point dogs at Carolina. They are right now look ahead, slight favorites against the Falcons. This is kind of an under 3.5-point dogs at New England as of right now, which feels high. And then against the Dolphins, Carolina is just a 1.5 dog. So to win 4 or 5 of those games, I mean, they'd have to have 3 upsets. Again, it's 3 points. It's not a lot, but they're upsets anyways. Certainly possible. Look, the matchups are favorable for them, I think. And I'm curious. I would be, 3 wins at plus 285 would be enticing. 4 wins probably at plus 650 would be enticing. Those are markets I look at, and I'd be okay putting some money on those.
There's some other interesting markets here that DraftKings offers, Geoff. Of course, they are the sponsor of this program. And one of them is, how about this make or miss playoff parlay? Atlanta to make the postseason and New Orleans to miss it at plus $1.50. Now, I think you and I sit here today in late June and do not see a pathway for the Saints to be a playoff team. So then you're getting a little bit of extra juice on the Falcons to make the postseason at plus $1.50. Is that a decent strategy if we're that confident that New Orleans is not going to surprise anybody?
No. And I'll tell you why I don't think it's a good strategy. One is that you're basically just wagering on the Falcons to make the playoffs at this point, right?
That's right.
And so you can find better than plus 150 at some point this season. It's that simple, right? Right, Dave? Like you can find a better number for Falcons to make the playoffs than plus 150. Because I think we all agree that the Saints are just not making the playoffs. So just like that, just kind of like a fancy way to make this a fancier wager. But one side is I'm looking up right now just to have the right numbers on the miss playoffs. The Saints that miss the playoffs, I would imagine, is what, over minus 1,000? Like it's
minus 900. Minus 900 to miss the playoffs.
So it's not happening. So just throw that out and just bet the Falcons at some point to make the playoffs when they're 2-2. Like, you know what I mean? So Atlanta right now is so okay. Here's the deal. Look, I'm on DraftKings right now. Okay, this is guys. Don't fall for these wagers. The Falcons to make the playoffs right now are plus 155. Just bet the Falcons to make the playoffs.
Better number than the double. Yeah, why would you? Oh my goodness! See, that's why we always advocated VSiN. Shop around, as Geoff just did, to make sure you get the best of the number for the same bet. Let's play the Falcons to win to make the postseason. To win the division, they're plus 240. We mentioned Tampa Bay. They've made it every year, won the division every year since Brady retired, which is pretty amazing. They're still even money to do that again. Carolina, as we talked about, 4-1. To win this division. New Orleans, I don't think you and I think that's a playable number at 10-1. That should be even longer. Out of the other 3 choices, Tampa Bay to do it again, Atlanta to get there. They were close last year, or Carolina at 4-1. Do you like the value of Carolina the best at those price points?
Yeah, I like the Panthers the best there. I sort of just never trust the Falcons. They're one of those teams I just don't trust personally. But to the Panthers, I think make the playoffs, win the division, probably win the division. I mean, to make the playoffs as a wild card team, you're going to need 10 wins. I mean, last year it was like 14 was the wild card.
Right.
I mean, last year the wild card was 11 with Green Bay, so it was the lowest number. So that feels high for the Panthers. So win the division probably is the wager you'd make here, and skip the playoff one. So that's the one I think I would play here. But again, these numbers will fluctuate each week, and you could maybe find yourself with a better number at some point throughout the season. But right now, that's the one I would play if you're asking me to play one.
Yeah, I have where your head's at. And again, if you're on the Falcons and you like them to either make the postseason at plus $1.55 and or win the division at plus 240, play the over 7.5 for their win total. And then you'd have to clear that barrier anyway if you really think they're in play to be either a wild card team and or a divisional champ. But I'm with you too. Like Carolina, 6.5 for that win total. In order to really shock some people at 4-1 to win the division, you got to be at least a 9-win team, Geoff, to win that division?
Probably 9 and 8. Yeah.
That puts you in the mix. You're in the conversation. Yeah, absolutely.
So, but that's a wild card. I don't think we're getting a wild card team from this division. So that's why I just bet the Panthers win the division.
Yep. A much smarter way again to make the same wager at a better price point. Geoff, always enjoy the conversation, my friend.
Yes.
Appreciate it as always. Hopefully we'll do it again next week as we get oh so close to the beginning of real football this summer.
Can't wait.
Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle. It's almost here, Geoff. We'll see you next week right here on DraftKings.